Hello and welcome to the sleepy universe. Tonight, you're not just lying still, you're gently rewiring. As your breath slows and your thoughts begin to soften, we'll journey into the quiet wonder of your own brain, the place where memories are shaped, habits are broken, and healing quietly begins. This is the story of neuroplasticity, how your brain, even now, is listening, learning, and changing. You don't have to do anything, just rest, and let your mind begin to wander. You lie still, and yet, within you, something reshapes, not bone or blood, but something quieter. Your brain, the soft folded nest of thoughts and wonder, is not made of fixed lines. It is not a machine of levers and locks, despite how it may seem. Instead, it is soft clay in twilight, shaped by every whisper of experience. Every time you think, remember, feel, or reach, even in silence your brain shifts, not drastically, not all at once, but like slow tides erasing footprints on a shore. You do not need to try, it is already happening. This moment, right now, as your eyes soften and your breath evens, your neurons wait. They are not statues in darkness. They are listeners. They are dancers waiting for rhythm. Your entire life has been shaping this hidden landscape, and the miracle is, it never stops. It never freezes. The brain is not finished, even when you are full grown, even when you feel set in your ways. From the first heartbeat in the womb to the last breath in the dark, it remains alive in motion, reweaving itself from the threads of your days. Picture it now, not anatomically, but tenderly. A quiet forest of branching trees, their limbs glowing faintly in the night. Each neuron is one of those trees, and the spaces between them shimmer with potential. The way they connect, the roots they favor, the strength of each bridge, these are sculpted by what you do and what you feel. When you read, when you sing, when you fall in love, or when you grieve, new paths form or old ones deepen. You do not command this sculpting like a builder with a blueprint. You influence it gently, with repetition, with attention, with meaning. The brain does not grow louder when things matter more. It grows quieter, more focused, as if bowing its head to listen. Even now, in stillness, it listens. The very act of paying attention to your breath, of relaxing your tongue, of noticing the weight of your body, this too is shaping the clay. You think sleep is inactivity, but your brain is more alive in these slow moments than it often is in daylight rush. Here, without distraction, it can realign its map. It can press new grooves into its surface, small and slow and sacred. And these grooves matter, because they are not just memory or mood, they are who you are becoming. The term neuroplasticity sounds technical, but it is soft at heart. Neuro, your nerves, your brain. Plasticity, the power to bend and reshape. You might think of plastic, a material that can stretch and return. But think softer. Think of wet sand. Think of warm wax. Think of a spiral that doesn't snap when unwound, only rests in a new shape. That is what your brain does, again and again. And you, without realizing it, are the sculptor. You may feel the weight of your habits. You may believe you are wired a certain way, anxious, forgetful, impatient, shy. But wiring is not the same as destiny. The roads your thoughts follow are paths made by footsteps, not stone walls. The more often you walk them, the smoother they become, but you can always step aside, even slightly, and begin a new trail. That is the grace of plasticity. It offers the possibility of gentle change in childhood, Plasticity is like spring, quick and generous, open to growth with every gust of input. Children absorb languages, patterns, and skills like breath. But adulthood is not winter. It is summer. The change is slower, the sun higher, the soil a bit drier, but still things grow. You do not lose the ability to change. You simply gain the ability to choose it. And so you return again and again to the act of noticing. That is the first movement of all change. Noticing the pattern, noticing the thought that always comes next. The reaction you carry like a reflex. When you notice, without judgment, your brain begins to shift. A flicker, a pause. The clay begins to stir. This noticing is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is something quieter than words, like the way moss begins to grow where feet no longer tread. Softly, the old paths start to fade. This is not magic. It is not a promise that everything will be easy. Plasticity is not quicksand. You cannot erase a path in one breath, but with each breath, you begin again. The more you return to the place you wish to walk, the more real it becomes. Neurons that fire together, wire together. This is the gentle rule of the mind. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. You might wonder where this is all heading, this soft resculpting of your own mind. It heads nowhere. Final, that is its beauty. You are always in motion, even when you're still. You are not becoming someone else. You are uncovering new corners of yourself, new ways to hold the same truths, to see the same world with clearer or kinder eyes. Neuroplasticity does not give you control. It gives you participation. Let yourself imagine this. Each day your thoughts are rivers. Some are wide, some are narrow, some are dry. As you think, as you feel, as you practice, you divert the flow. A little more here, a little less there. Eventually, without effort, your mind begins to flow differently. Not better, not worse, simply aligned with who you are becoming. You are not your habits. You are not your reactions. You are not your past circuitry. You are a living system, updating, in real time. And that means every small kindness toward yourself, toward others, is not just a gesture, it is a sculpting. Your compassion changes your mind. Your attention reroutes your neurons. Every time you choose softness over shame, you press your hands into the clay, and so you breathe. You rest, you return. Not because something is wrong, but because something is possible. Because the forest of your mind is listening, and as your thoughts slow, as your eyelids grow heavy, you feel it. The first, quiet reshaping of the world within you. The question then begins to bloom: if your brain changes with what you do, how does it change with what you repeat? You sit quietly now, and yet, within you, lightning travels. Not the sky-shaking kind, not the thunder-bound bolts that split trees, but small, quiet sparks, gliding from one cell to the next like messengers at twilight. These sparks are your thoughts, your memories, your movements. They do not float aimlessly, they follow paths. Narrow roads built not of stone, but of repetition. The more you think something, the easier it is to think it again. The more you act a certain way, the more natural that action becomes. Each spark lays a trace, and over time, those traces deepen into grooves. You are not trapped by these grooves, but you do travel them, often without noticing. This is how the mind conserves energy, by following familiar trails. And yet, these trails were not always there. Once, they were nothing, just empty forest, blank space, before you learned to tie your shoes, before you knew the way home, before you carried the sound of your name, the paths did not exist. But then, slowly, through experience, they formed. Each time you try something, a faint mark is made. Try again, and the mark darkens. Do it enough, and it becomes a path. This is how you learn. This is how habits are born and how they grow. Like the way footsteps wear down grass or wheels smooth dirt into roads. Some paths are helpful, others are not. But all of them are changeable. You may not be able to erase a road in a day, but you can always step off it. You can choose a new direction. That is the promise of neuroplasticity. Not that everything is easy, but that nothing is unchangeable. Neurons are the trees, synapses are the spaces between them, and the spark, the electrochemical signal, is what jumps across. It does not drift like a cloud. It leaps like a dancer. The leap depends on familiarity. The more often a connection is used, the stronger it becomes. Like two friends who speak daily, the signal travels quickly, easily. When a path is new, the signal moves slowly, uncertainly, like a stranger knocking at an unfamiliar door. But the brain, ever economical, strengthens what is used. What you practice grows. What you ignore fades. This is why your thoughts matter. Not just for mood, not just for mindset, but for structure. When you dwell on fear, the paths of fear become easier to walk. When you practice patience, the paths of patience become clearer, not because your soul changes, but because your brain responds. You sculpt it without knowing. Every spark, every repetition, becomes a vote for a direction. Not a decree, not a trap, just a direction. And over time, direction becomes instinct. The beauty of this system is its fairness. The brain does not judge what you rehearse. It simply listens. It builds what you ask it to. It does not question whether a habit is helpful. It only recognizes that the habit is frequent. It does not resist your attempts to change. It only waits to see if your effort is real. And if it is, if you return again and again to a new path, the brain builds the bridge. Slowly, yes. Imperfectly, yes. But always faithfully. You can think of your thoughts as travelers. Each thought walks a trail. Some walk alone and vanish. Others return, bringing friends. Eventually, a trail becomes a road, then a highway. This is how beliefs form, not overnight, through traffic, through repetition. The more a belief is rehearsed, the more natural it feels. But beliefs are not boulders. They are patterns of sparks, which means they can be unlearned, rewritten, redirected. There's a principle in neuroscience called Hebb's rule. It says, neurons that fire together, wire together. This is the quiet magic behind everything from learning to walk to recovering from trauma. Fire together, wire together. That's how a piano player learns to play blindfolded. That's how you remember your childhood home. That's how fear can live in your muscles. And that's also how courage can grow. New pairings, new firings, new wires. You are not stuck with the roads you inherited. But what about old roads? The ones you no longer want to walk? Do they vanish? Do they rot? Not quite. They fade. The brain trims unused paths like a gardener trims branches. The process is called synaptic pruning. If a connection is not used, it weakens. Slowly, gently, the brain clears space for what matters now. It does not delete your memories, but it frees you from their dominance. It makes room for the present. And this too is plasticity, not just the creation of paths, but the letting go of old ones. So when you repeat something, a word, a movement, a thought, know that you are laying tracks. Know that your repetition is not empty, it is constructive. And when you choose not to repeat, when you pause, reflect, resist, that too is an act of sculpting. You are not static, you are in rehearsal, always. This understanding is both comforting and humbling. Comforting because you were never fixed. Humbling because you are responsible for what you reinforce. The sparks in your brain do not wait for motivation, they wait for action. And action, even small, even slow, lays the future down. So, as you rest now, drifting slowly into sleep, the sparks continue their soft relay. They map your learnings, they trace your day, they highlight what was important. They begin to tidy the landscape, making way for what you'll learn next. Your dreams may stir this too, not randomly, but gently reinforcing or loosening what the day has wired. This is your brain not as judge, but as mirror, not as jailer, but as gardener. And as the sparks travel once more across familiar synapses, and as old paths settle and new ones beckon, you begin to wonder if repetition shapes the self. How does the self choose what to repeat? There's a quiet rhythm to your life, not in the ticking of clocks, but in the movements you make without noticing. The way you reach for a cup, the order in which you brush your teeth, the path your thoughts follow when you're anxious. These are not just routines, they are rehearsals, patterns. Some you learned early, others more recently. All of them, over time, become folded into the architecture of your brain. Repetition makes things easier. That is the mind's way of saving energy. If a certain action, thought, or emotion shows up often enough, the brain offers it like a well-worn coat. Here, wear this, you've chosen it before. It fits. At first, a pattern is fragile, like a trail of footprints in sand, easily washed away. But if you keep walking it, even lightly, the ground hardens. Neurons begin firing in sync. Connections are reinforced. Pathways strengthen. Eventually, a whisper becomes a habit, and a habit becomes automatic. The mind, ever faithful, responds to your practice. It cannot tell good from bad, healthy from harmful. It knows only what is frequent. This is both the gift and the challenge of being human. Your brain will support whatever you give it. Think of a pianist learning a scale. At first, each note is effortful, conscious. Over time, the hands remember. The muscles move with ease. That ease isn't magic. It's practice. Repetition doesn't just train the body, it shapes the very wiring of the brain. And this happens not just in music, but in emotion, in thought, in belief. If you repeatedly tell yourself you're not good enough, the brain doesn't argue, it adapts. If you focus daily on gratitude, the brain makes it easier to feel thankful. What you dwell on, you deepen. What you practice, you become. This is how the mind learns to expect certain feelings, joy or sorrow, calm or urgency. If stress is a daily companion, your brain learns to anticipate it, to respond before it even fully arrives. If peace is regularly cultivated, your brain builds access to it more quickly. These are not moral judgments, they are patterns, and patterns are not prisons. They can be rewritten, but first, they must be seen. Awareness is the moment you step off the moving walkway. You look around and realize, this feeling, this thought, this behavior, it isn't fate. It's something you've practiced. Perhaps unconsciously, perhaps for years. But now, with your attention, you can ask, do I still need this? Is it helping? is it true? Sometimes you carry patterns that once kept you safe, a tendency to hold back, to over-prepare, to keep your voice small. These may have served you in childhood, in danger, in uncertainty, but the brain does not automatically retire old strategies. It waits. It watches for your new direction. If you keep sending the same signal, it keeps strengthening the same path. But if you begin gently, consistently, to move differently, your brain follows. It does not resist change out of stubbornness. It simply trusts what you do most. Patterns can live not only in thought, but in posture, in breath. The body remembers what the mind forgets. Shoulders that tense in fear, a stomach that tightens in worry, hands that fidget in self-doubt. These are learned responses, conditioned, practiced, not permanent. Each breath is a chance to soften. Each moment of stillness is a rehearsal for calm. This is not about fixing yourself, but returning to yourself, unlearning what no longer fits, giving your brain new signals to hold. The science behind this is grounded in how neurons behave. Synaptic plasticity, the ability for connections to strengthen or weaken based on activity, means that change is always possible. But it also means that unconscious repetition reinforces whatever currently exists. This is why change can feel slow. You are not just choosing new behavior. You are building new roads while old ones still whisper, still invite. There's comfort in knowing that your brain doesn't need perfection, only persistence. A new habit doesn't need to be dramatic. Even small acts, taking a single breath before reacting, reaching out instead of retreating, signal the brain. This is the new path. Over time, those signals are heard, reinforced, supported. You don't have to undo everything at once. You only have to begin. The brain, in its patient wisdom, meets you wherever you start. What's powerful about this truth is that your patterns are not solely determined by your past. They are sculpted by your present. You have agency, not over every thought that arises, but over how often you invite certain thoughts to stay. The brain listens to repetition more than volume. What's quiet but constant becomes stronger than what is loud but rare. And so, as you lie still now, soft in your sheets, you might begin to notice what you've rehearsed today. What feelings walked your inner stage? What thoughts found easy entrance? This isn't judgment. It's awareness. From awareness comes choice. And from choice, change. Some patterns you'll keep the way you comfort a friend, the way you seek wonder, the way you laugh from the belly. These are beautiful grooves, well-worn and kind. Others you might choose to shift, not because they are wrong, but because they no longer serve. In either case, your brain adapts, not overnight, but faithfully. Every time you return to a new pattern, the brain grows more fluent in it. What was effort becomes ease. What was foreign becomes home. And as the quiet deepens around you, and the hum of the world fades into night, your thoughts slow to not stopped, but softened. Rehearsal never ends. Even in sleep, the brain reviews, replays. It trims what's unused, strengthens what's practiced. Dreams may carry the echoes of your patterns, not as stories, but as signals. You are always becoming, not in leaps, but in loops, not in lightning, but in rain. Each drop carving a path. And if patterns shape the self, you begin to wonder what might shift if you practiced joy again and again until it too became a road home. You begin to notice something gentle, that your body is not separate from your brain, but an extension of it, a whisper that walks. When you move, your mind responds. When you reach or lift or breathe deeply, your brain does not merely observe, it adapts. Every motion is a quiet rehearsal, not just of muscle, but of memory, intention, and pattern. The act of standing, of stepping, of stretching your arms overhead sends signals not only through your limbs but across your neural networks. This is not metaphor. This is biology. The body speaks to the brain, and the brain listens intently, adjusting, reshaping, rebuilding the pathways through which you understand the world. Movement is not separate from thought. It is thought expressed in space. Consider how children learn, not by sitting still and listening, but by touching, climbing, wobbling, spinning. The brain is forged in these moments. Balance, rhythm, orientation, these are the first languages of intelligence, and long after childhood fades, the link remains. Your ability to learn, to focus, to regulate your mood is tied not only to what you think, but how you move. A slow walk in nature can soothe your nerves. A gentle yoga pose can shift your emotional weather. A hand pressed to your chest can calm a racing heart. These are not tricks, they are translations, body to brain and back again. Scientists have studied this deeply. The regions of the brain that govern movement, the motor cortex, the cerebellum, the basal ganglia, are not isolated. They are richly connected to the parts that manage emotion, attention, and memory. When you engage the body, you light up the brain. This is why physical activity improves learning, why gestures help with recall, why even fidgeting has a place. The mind is not a floating cloud. It is rooted in the body's rhythms. Each footstep changes the chemistry of your awareness. Each stretch rewires circuits. Neuroplasticity, the ability to change, is amplified by movement. And not just large movement, tiny ones too. The shifting of eyes across a page, the subtle movements of lips as you read silently, the sway of your spine as you breathe. These are not static. They are full of signals. Your body is always talking to your brain, mapping space, adjusting mood, registering tension. Even when you sit in stillness, your posture tells a story, one that your nervous system listens to closely. Slumped shoulders might echo sadness. An open chest might invite confidence. You can't trick the brain, but you can invite it into new patterns, gently, repeatedly, kindly, when thought and movement combine, as they do in dance. In martial arts, in mindful walking, the brain doesn't just learn faster, it learns deeper. Emotional resilience improves. Spatial memory sharpens. Creative problem-solving expands. This is not mystical, it's electrical. The brain's networks become more flexible when the body participates. The hippocampus, where memory lives, grows stronger with movement. The prefrontal cortex, where focus resides, wakes up with every heartbeat raised. You are not a mind carrying a body. You are a body that thinks. Even in healing, this matters. Trauma, often stored in muscle tension and breath patterns, can begin to shift through physical expression. A trembling hand, a deep exhale, a relaxed jaw. These are signals, not always dramatic, but always meaningful. The body carries histories. The brain alone cannot unravel. And so, in healing, we return to the body. To walk, to sway, to rock gently, to breathe with intention. Each movement becomes a ritual of return, a map back to safety. Neuroplasticity honors this. It recognizes that experience reshapes the brain, and that experience is not confined to thought. Touch, motion, pressure, these are experiences too. This is why physical therapies, somatic practices, even simple stretching routines can feel emotional. They are not just relaxing the body, they are rewriting the script, softening the edges, offering the brain a new storyline, one that includes peace. And just as thoughts can become loops, so can movements. A clenched fist, a hunched back, repeated tensions shape the brain's expectations. But like thoughts, they can be undone, not by force, but by rhythm. Small, rhythmic actions, swaying, tapping, breathing slowly, can interrupt spirals. The brain watches, adjusts, learns. You are not trapped by your posture. You are invited by it to notice, to shift, to begin again. You don't need to move grandly. Even now, lying still, you are in motion. Your breath rises and falls. Your heart pulses. Your eyes, behind closed lids, twitched with dreams. The still body is never truly still, and each of these movements, subtle, slow, continues to sculpt your neural landscape. This moment, this restful pause, is part of the process. Stillness is not the absence of activity. It is the presence of listening, and your brain listens deeply in stillness. It files, it organizes, it trims unused connections and strengthens practiced ones. Sleep itself is a dance of brain waves and chemistry. You are moving inside, and in the day to come, you might feel differently. A walk might feel more like medicine. A stretch might feel like a reset. A deep breath might feel like an opening. This is how awareness blooms slowly, quietly, in the folds of movement, and the more you notice, the more you can guide. You don't need to control every gesture. You only need to respect its power. The mind is shaped by what the body repeats, and the body remembers what you've asked it to hold. Tonight, you are not trying to do anything. You are simply letting your body breathe, rest, renew. And even in that, your brain is learning. Even in stillness, your nervous system is shifting. Thought and motion are not opposites. They are partners. Each movement is a message. Each breath a rehearsal for calm. And somewhere inside this quiet, your mind rewires gently, silently, faithfully. So you begin to wonder if motion can reshape the mind, what movements might bring you closer to joy. You begin to hear yourself, not out loud, but inside, a thought, whispered under breath, a quiet sentence curled beneath awareness, and you realize your brain hears it all. Not just the words you speak to others, but the ones you murmur only to yourself. I can't, I should've, I'm tired, I'm trying. These phrases echo like soft tides across the inner shore of your mind. They are not harmless. They are not background noise. They shape the wiring of your brain. Each phrase is a ripple of electricity, a pattern rehearsed. What you tell yourself, you begin to believe. And what you believe, your brain begins to build. Neuroplasticity is not passive. It is listening, responding, repeating. If you tell yourself that you are not good enough, your brain adapts, not because it agrees, but because it trusts you. It lays down circuits that expect difficulty. It becomes more efficient at doubt. But the opposite is also true. A gentle phrase, I am learning, I am safe, I'm allowed to rest, begins to trace a new path. Not magical, biological. Words are input, and your brain reshapes to meet them. You've done this before, without realizing. Learned a new word, and suddenly heard it everywhere. Practiced a phrase in a new language, and felt your tongue shift to hold its rhythm. Language doesn't just describe your experience, it writes it. Your thoughts are built on words. And so, Changing the words changes the thought. A single reframe from I failed to I'm not finished redirects your brain's attention. It seeks a new path, a new signal, and that signal, repeated, becomes a new trail. Inside your skull, neurons are always listening, not just to sounds, but to patterns. When you use the same phrase again and again, it becomes easier for your brain to call it up. This is how mantras work, not because they are mystical, but because they are efficient. Repetition strengthens connection. And so, the way you speak, especially to yourself, is the way your brain learns to think. There is an area called Broca's area deep in your frontal lobe that helps shape speech. Nearby, Wernicke's area helps decode meaning. But the magic doesn't live in one spot. It's everywhere. Language lights up your brain like fireflies. Emotion, memory, reasoning, motion, all touched by the words you choose. When you hear someone speak with kindness, your amygdala, the emotional hub, calms. When you read a hopeful story, your dopamine centers flicker. The voice becomes chemistry. The sentence becomes sensation. You are not just hearing, you are transforming, and your own voice matters most. Studies have shown that the way you self-talk, especially under stress, predicts how your brain responds. Harsh words ignite threat responses. Gentle words soften them. This isn't about pretending, it's about tone. Even when things are difficult, how you speak to yourself can change your brain's resilience. Saying this is hard, and I can handle it builds flexibility. Your neurons record it. Your nervous system remembers. Think of affirmations not as slogans, but as instructions. Not to convince, but to invite. I am learning. I am healing. I am resting. These phrases aren't promises. They are permissions, and your brain listens. It adjusts neurotransmitters. It softens cortisol spikes. It rewires expectations. Over time, it adapts not to who you were, but to the story you now tell. And this goes deeper than thought. Even your voice tone matters. Soft, slow speech calms the vagus nerve, the deep river that runs through your autonomic nervous system. It tells your body, we are safe, we can rest. When you whisper kindness, even silently, you touch this river. You become your own lullaby. The science is ancient, hidden in plain breath. You may recall moments where words shaped you. A compliment that stayed with you for years. A criticism that echoed longer than it should. These were not fleeting. They etched patterns in your memory, shaped the way your brain anticipated the world. But you were not fixed by them. Neuroplasticity means your brain can unlearn, relearn, and choose again. Your inner voice is a sculptor. Every sentence, a chisel. Stroke. Tonight, as you lie still, the quiet becomes clearer. You begin to hear how often you narrate. I'm behind, I'm not doing enough, I forgot again. These phrases may feel casual, but your brain holds them close, not because they're true, but because they're familiar. And what's familiar becomes efficient. But you can choose to change the tune. A new sentence, repeated softly, becomes a new path. Like wearing down grass in a field, the more you walk it, the clearer it becomes. And you don't need to force positivity. You only need to soften the edge. You can go from I hate this to this is hard, from I can't to not, yet from I'm failing to I'm learning. These shifts are small, but they are tectonic beneath the surface. They change how your brain tags the moment. They change how your nervous system responds to the world. Even in silence, your brain speaks. The hum beneath the hum, the language of thought, you can begin to tune that voice, slowly, gently, with care. You are not talking to a stranger. You are talking to your most loyal listener. And it wants to help you. It always has. So tonight, let the words soften. Let your inner narration be like wind in tall grass, gentle, rhythmic, unhurried. You are not trying to arrive anywhere. You are only letting your voice become a friend, because your brain is listening, and it is waiting to grow in the direction you choose. And if the brain listens so deeply to words, what happens when it listens to silence? You lie in quiet, and at first it feels like nothing, a pause, a gap, the space where noise used to be. But then you notice the silence is not hollow, it breathes. Beneath the absence of sound, there is presence. Your body begins to soften, your thoughts drift like clouds without anchors, and your brain, so used to reacting, begins to settle into something deeper. You are not doing, you are being. And in this stillness, your brain begins to listen. Not to words, not to movement, but to the absence of both. And that absence speaks in silence. Your brain shifts into a different rhythm. Waves slow down from the busy chatter of beta into the calmer waters of alpha and theta. These aren't just labels. They are real electrical pulses flowing through your cortex like gentle rain. Theta waves rise during quiet reflection, daydreaming and light sleep, states where ideas surface unforced, like bubbles rising from the deep. Alpha waves are the space between alertness and dreaming, open, soft, ready. And it is here, in these slower frequencies, that the brain begins its quiet work. Neuroplasticity does not need noise to function. It needs conditions, and one of those is rest. In silence, your brain clears debris, unused connections, old signals, small disruptions in the web. It prunes, it breathes, it rebalances chemicals and resets thresholds. This is not laziness, it is the biology of preparation. In stillness, your brain reorganizes itself, quietly rewriting its own structure so it's ready for what comes next. Consider the default mode network, a set of brain regions that hum to life when you are not focused on any one task. It activates when you daydream, reflect, wander mentally. Scientists used to dismiss it as idle background, static. But now we know this network is vital. It processes your identity, your memories, your imagined futures. It connects dots without you realizing. It solves problems you didn't know you had. And it works best in silence, when you are not forcing anything. You may have noticed this without naming it. Ideas arriving in the shower, clarity emerging during a quiet walk, understanding unfolding just before sleep. These moments feel magical, but they are mechanical, too. They are what happens when your brain is given space. When nothing is demanded, it offers everything. When silence enters, creativity awakens, connections form, meaning crystallizes from mist, and it goes deeper still. Even the nervous system responds to silence. Your parasympathetic branch, the one responsible for rest, digestion, and healing, activates when stimuli quiet down. In stillness, your heartbeat slows, cortisol drops, blood flows back to your core, and in this quiet biological exhale, the brain feels safe enough to change. Because neuroplasticity is not just about input, it is about safety. The brain cannot rewire in fear. It needs silence to trust. In a world of constant alerts, silence is rare, but your brain was made for it. Our ancestors spent long hours under stars, listening to wind, to animals, to the hush between sounds. Their brains, like yours, learned in that stillness. They shaped stories and memory in quiet repetition, not noise. And so, your neural networks are still tuned to hear the silent signal, the one beneath language and beyond effort. You might wonder, what does silence actually do to the brain? In studies, even brief moments of silence increased neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons, particularly in the hippocampus, a center for memory and emotion. Not music, not speech, silence, as if the brain, relieved of its usual processing, turned inward and began to grow. As if it said, "Here is space, let's build." And silence is not just external. There is an inner quiet to the still point. Between thoughts, meditation teaches this. But you don't need to sit cross-legged to feel it. Even lying here, eyes closed, breath soft, you can begin to notice the pause between thoughts, the brief exhale of the mind. You might miss it at first, but over time you feel it. That slow rhythm of awareness without judgment. It is here your brain begins to loosen old grooves. It is here that new paths can emerge, gently, without force. This inner stillness is not empty. It is creative. It is the pause that allows the note to sing. In music, silence is structure. Without it, there is no melody, only noise. The brain works the same way. The space between thoughts gives shape to thinking. It gives room for ideas to echo, for memories to return, for calm to rise. And it is in this room that the brain reshapes itself, piece by quiet piece. You are not doing anything now, and yet, your brain is active, humming like a garden in moonlight, growing in ways you can't see. New dendrites extend like tiny branches. Synapses pulse with potential. Entire circuits begin to fade or strengthen depending on what is needed. Not all learning is loud. Not all growth is visible. Some happens here in the hush between awareness and sleep. And so, tonight, let yourself listen, not for something, but into something. The soft landscape of your own inner silence. Let thoughts come and go like passing clouds. Let breath rise and fall without needing to change it. Trust that your brain is listening, that even without effort, something is shifting. You may not feel different tomorrow. That's okay. Change isn't always loud. Often it's like the turning of the tide, slow, steady, unnoticed until the shoreline has changed. Neuroplasticity honors that. It doesn't rush, it reshapes. And silence is part of the blueprint, so lie here. Rest in this quiet, let the silence speak. And know, even in stillness, your brain is listening, adapting, becoming dot. And if silence shapes your brain, what does attention do? Your eyes may be closed, but attention is awake. It reaches like a fingertip in the dark, brushing across sensations, thoughts, memories. It chooses gently what to hold and what to let float by. Attention is not sight. It is spotlight. It's the gentle nudge that tells your brain this matters. And in response, your neurons whisper, then let's make it stronger. In this way, attention becomes the hand that sculpts the brain. Neuroplasticity does not bloom evenly across the mind. It follows rivers, not oceans, specific, winding, personal, and those rivers are carved by attention. The more you return to a thought, a movement, an idea, the deeper the groove becomes. Your brain learns what you care about. It learns what you return to. Neurons that fire together, wire together, but only if they're called upon again and again, and it is attention that does the calling. Imagine a violinist, fingers moving with practiced ease. Every note is precise, not because of talent alone, but because of repetition, attention applied again and again to the same small action until it carved a neural pathway so refined it became second nature. Whether it is music, language, emotion, or memory, the same truth echoes. What you repeat with care, you become. But attention isn't always active. It also drifts, and even drifting carves patterns. Worry, for example, is attention looping through imagined futures. The brain doesn't distinguish well between what's real and what's rehearsed. So attention given to fear strengthens fear, just as attention to calm strengthens calm. This isn't judgment. It's architecture. You are building yourself, moment by moment, thought by thought, and yet attention is limited. Like a small candle in a vast room, it only lights so much. But what it lights, the brain sees as important. That's why multitasking feels scattered, not because your brain is failing, but because it can't sculpt well in many places at once. Focus is the chisel. Distraction is the gust that blurs the edges. When you give deep attention, your brain rewards you. It releases chemicals like dopamine, reinforcing the neural loop. Over time, sustained attention builds efficiency. It reduces the need for conscious effort. This is how habits form, not only physical, but mental too. Patterns of kindness, patterns of curiosity, patterns of fear, all shaped by where attention goes. There's a part of your brain called the anterior, cingulate cortex, a quiet supervisor of focus. It helps you tune out noise to choose what matters. And like all parts of the brain, it grows with use. When you practice attention, whether in meditation, learning, or even listening deeply to another, this part strengthens. You become better at choosing your mind's direction, and with practice, attention becomes easier. Like training a shy animal to trust you, it stays longer, it wanders less. You begin to guide it not with force, but with familiarity. You learn its rhythm, and it learns yours. Together, you shape a brain more capable of depth, patience, and clarity. But attention is not only for the mind, it flows into the body too. When you focus on sensation, the air on your skin, the rise of breath, the beat of your heart, you activate circuits tied to interoception, the sense of what's happening inside you. This inward attention builds awareness, emotional regulation, and even empathy. You become not only more focused, but more connected to yourself. And still, attention isn't perfect. It flickers, it fades. That's not failure, that's nature. What matters is return. Each time your attention strays and you gently bring it back, your brain rewires. You strengthen the pathway of returning, just as muscles grow not from holding still, but from repeated movement. Attention deepens through the practice of coming home. This is why mindfulness and meditation are not about emptying the mind, but noticing where it goes and choosing again. Each return is a stroke of the sculptor's hand. Each moment of noticing is a signal to the brain. This, here, now, this is what we build. You are not carving marble, you are weaving connection. Attention shapes both neurons and meaning. It tells your brain not just what to strengthen, but what to make sacred. A touch, a phrase, a memory, if held long enough, becomes not just experience, but identity. You are not only what happens to you, you are what you attend to. So tonight, as your thoughts drift and return, know that even this gentle focus matters. You are shaping more than sleep. You are sculpting awareness. You are training your brain to notice, to hold gently, and to change. Attention is a choice, yes, but also a gift. It cannot be forced, but it can be invited. And with every return, it becomes less of a tool and more of a home. But if attention shapes what you become, what happens when you turn it inward? You lie still, but the mind moves. Beneath the quiet of your skin, thoughts ripple. Some arrive soft and slow, others flicker like candlelight. But now you begin to notice not the thoughts themselves, but the one watching, the quiet gaze behind the noise, the mirror inside the mind. This self-awareness is not loud. It doesn't shout. It hums. And in that hum, your brain reshapes itself again. Your brain is not just reacting, it is observing, aware of your movements, your emotions, your thoughts. This capacity is called metacognition, thinking about thinking. It is not unique to humans, but in you it becomes vivid. It's the moment you realize you are worrying, or the pause where you notice you're about to speak. It's the whisper in your mind that says, look, feel, choose, inside the folds of your cortex, especially in the prefrontal lobe. This self-monitoring blooms. Neurons loop in recursive pathways. One part of the brain sends a signal, another part receives it and reflects. These loops allow you to remember what you just thought, to adjust, to grow. You are, in this way, not a single stream, but a river looking at its own current. This reflective ability lets you edit your memories. Each time you recall an experience, your brain doesn't replay it like a video, it recreates it. And in recreating, it alters, slightly, sometimes subtly, sometimes profoundly. Self-awareness guides which memories to strengthen, which to soften. It shapes your story. That's why the past is not fixed. The act of remembering is also the act of rewriting. You are an author, not just a reader. The neural traces of experience, called engrams, are malleable. Revisited with awareness, they bend. You learn to see yourself differently. You forgive, you regret, you understand, and your brain changes with you. Mirror neurons, special cells, scattered through your motor and sensory areas, also contribute to this awareness. When you watch someone move, your brain activates as if you were moving too. You feel their gesture inside your own body. This is not magic. It is empathy, built-in simulation. Your brain mirrors the world, then uses that reflection to guide your response. And so the mirror is not only inward, it is social. You reflect others. They reflect you. This recursive dance trains your brain to recognize emotions, to anticipate reactions, to build bridges of connection. Over time, your brain grows more skilled at knowing not just what you think, but how others might feel. Stillness sharpens the mirror. When you pause in silence, in breath, in meditation, you allow the observer to rise gently above the noise. The default mode network, a constellation of brain regions that hums when you're not doing anything in particular, becomes more visible. In that hum, you wander through thoughts of self, time, and possibility. It is here that your brain rehearses identity, the story of I. But even this story isn't static. Your sense of self is a shifting constellation. It changes with age, with experience, with reflection. Your brain does not hold a fixed you. It holds a fluid one, sculpted by culture, memory, emotion, and attention. And yet, through all that shifting, there remains a watcher, a soft mirror, the one who notices the change. This noticing helps you grow. It's what lets you interrupt a habit, to step back from anger, to question an old belief. Without self-awareness, learning is shallow. With it, learning becomes deep and transformative. You don't just add knowledge, you reshape your lens. You become new. Self-reflection also allows for paradox. You can hold two ideas at once. You can feel love and grief, fear and hope. Your brain becomes more spacious through awareness. The emotional centers soften. The prefrontal regions engage. You widen the space between reaction and response. This space is where wisdom lives. Even when you dream, the mirror flickers. Lucid dreaming, for example, is when the dreamer becomes aware they are dreaming. Studies show that the prefrontal cortex lights up differently in these states. The brain, even in sleep, practices awareness. The mirror never fully turns off. It dims, it drifts, but it remembers how to reflect. And as you grow in awareness, compassion grows too. Not just for others, but for yourself. You begin to see not only your strengths, but your limits. You witnessed your fears without drowning in them. You allow your mistakes to be teachers, not walls. This is the power of the inner mirror, not judgment, but understanding. Tonight, as thoughts rise and fade, you begin to see them not as commands, but as clouds, passing weather across the mind's sky. You watch them drift. You don't need to hold them. You don't need to fix them. Just observe. The brain, in this state, quiets. Neural chatter slows. Cortisol dips. Calm becomes possible. This is not detachment. It is presence. You are not floating away. You are settling in. Settling into a mind that is aware of itself, not as a solid thing, but as a flowing one. You are both the wave and the one who watches it roll in. The mirror inside your mind is not always clear. Sometimes it fogs. Sometimes it distorts. But each time you return to it with breath, with attention, with care, it clears a little more. And your brain remembers how to see itself kindly. But what happens when this mirror begins to break? When memory falters, when awareness fades? What does neuroplasticity mean when forgetting begins? You wake, and something feels just slightly out of place. A word hides in the corner of your mind. A face flickers, known but nameless. It passes, and the world resumes. But a shadow remains. This is how it often begins. Not with silence, but with soft erasure. Your brain, once a clear and detailed map, starts to lose a few lines. And yet, this too is part of the story. The brain does not age all at once. Like weathered stone, it changes gradually. Some areas soften, others remain solid. The hippocampus, where memory first takes shape, is often among the first to thin. Nodes, looser branches, and the connections, the synapses, flicker. But flickering is not failure. It is invitation, a call for attention, for care. Not all forgetting is decline. Some forgetting is protective. Your brain cannot carry every moment. It must choose. It must filter. In the dance of daily life, forgetting is the partner that lets remembering shine. You forget pain to heal. You forget noise to listen. But when forgetting becomes a pattern, unbidden and unchosen, the map begins to fade. Neurodegenerative conditions, like Alzheimer's or other dementias, touch this process deeply. Proteins misfold, plaques settle, tangled threads of tau appear like knots in the mind's weave. Communication slows. Pathways once sturdy feel slippery. And the person, so vivid, so complete, begins to feel unfamiliar even to themselves. Yet even here, the brain holds wonder. It resists in small, graceful ways. Other regions try to compensate. The prefrontal cortex may lean forward, filling in gaps. The emotional centers may stay steady longer than the factual ones. A familiar song, a scent from childhood, can awaken a room full of memory. These are not tricks, they are truths. The brain is still alive, still reaching. Caregivers become part of the map. Their voices, their rhythms, their love. These are cues the brain responds to. Faces may not be named, but feelings remain. Kindness is not forgotten. Even when language fades, emotion speaks. The limbic system, where feelings breathe, holds longer than logic. It sings softly through the fog. Even new learning is sometimes possible. The old saying that people with memory loss cannot form new memories isn't entirely true. With repetition, with rhythm, with music, the brain can still change, slowly, quietly, but meaningfully. Songs become lifelines, routine becomes structure, smiles become anchors. There is a term, cognitive reserve. It refers to the brain's ability to adapt, to work around damage. People who challenge their minds throughout life, through reading, through social bonds, through curiosity, often show fewer outward symptoms even when the brain shows signs of wear. The brain, like a river, finds new paths when old ones close. You may not choose all that happens in the brain, but you can choose how you walk with it. You can create environments that soothe rather than startle. Familiar objects, soft light, repeated phrases, gentle reminders. These are not small things. They are bridges, and inside the person, something deep remains. A spark, a presence. The part that listens, even when it cannot reply. The part that smiles at a child's laugh. The part that hums a lullaby from long ago. Neuroplasticity does not end. It simply changes pace. The brain listens in slower rhythms. It learns through warmth now, through safety, through repetition. For those watching a loved one fade, the journey is tender and steep. But even here, beauty lives. You begin to see connection without conversation. Eye contact becomes language. Touch becomes poetry. You are invited into the present moment in its purest form, stripped of memory, but full of being dot and in yourself. You feel the weight and wonder of remembering, how fragile it is, how sacred. You hold your memories a little closer. You speak names aloud. You revisit stories not just to entertain, but to reinforce the thread, and your brain listens. It notes the rhythm. It strengthens the paths. Tonight, you lie with the thought that even as the brain forgets, the heart often remembers. Not in facts, but in essence, in tone, in presence. Memory may falter, but being does not vanish. You are still here. Your breath still moves, and the map, though faded, still whispers its shape. But what if forgetting is not only personal? What if memory, cosmic, universal memory, can also vanish? Could the universe itself lose its past? You close your eyes and float beyond the mind's folds, past synapses and soft inner light, into the hush of the stars. Out here, in the quiet velvet of deep space, another kind of forgetting waits. Not a human forgetting, not memory slipping, gently from a name, but something larger, stranger, where gravity swallows even the story itself. Black holes begin as collapse. A massive star ends its burn, its light dims, and its core folds inward. Beyond a certain threshold, gravity becomes unstoppable. Space itself curves inward. What remains is not destruction, but an edge, the event horizon, a point beyond which no signal, no light, no memory can return. Or so it once seemed. You imagine tossing a journal into such a place, all the entries, all the thoughts, all the pages, gone, or are they? This is the paradox. Physicists once believed black holes erased information entirely, that the universe, so careful to conserve mass and energy, would allow memory to be deleted. But this idea troubled the deepest laws of physics. Information, at the smallest level, about particles, positions, states is supposed to be preserved. Even when transformed, it cannot be truly lost. So how could a black hole simply erase it all? Stephen Hawking once argued it did, but later even he shifted his view, suggesting that perhaps the information lingers, not inside, but on the very edge. The edge of forgetting, it turns out, may remember. Some now believe that information may be stored in subtle fluctuations, on the event horizon itself, etched in faint whispers, like ink on a stretched membrane. Or perhaps it's woven into the quantum fuzz of the black hole's boundaries, encoded not in location but in entanglement, the mysterious connection between particles. Quantum theory tells us that particles can be linked, even across vast distances, entangled. What happens to one affects the other instantly. If you tear one half away, say, into a black hole, does the other half still carry the trace? Can part of a memory, entangled in space, survive the forgetting of its twin? This is not just physics, it is poetry. The idea that nothing truly disappears, that even in absolute darkness, even at the limits of understanding, something remains, some pattern, some presence, some echo of what was. You realize, with a slow breath, that this mirrors the brain itself, that forgetting is rarely total, that somewhere buried deep, the trace may linger in scent, in song, in dream. Even a mind fading with age may hold a quiet imprint, a soft residual shape of memory long thought lost. In science, this question of black holes and information is still unresolved, but it opens something beautiful. It asks us to believe that memory, even cosmic memory, matters, that the universe keeps its own records, though hidden in folds we cannot yet reach. You drift now, letting the thoughts swell and quiet. Your own memories feel soft and liquid in your mind. The first time you saw starlight reflected on water, a voice you once knew singing in another room, a question you asked as a child that never quite found its answer. They are not gone. They wait, folded somewhere in you, rewritten in silence. And perhaps the universe is not forgetting you either. Perhaps every step, every neuron spark, every whisper of your being is part of a larger memory, one that does not fade, even as stars collapse. A memory not held in mind, but in motion, not in form, but in echo. Tonight, you rest in the knowledge that change is not loss, that even the deepest forgetting is not the end of story, but a pause in its telling. And just as your brain rewires, reshapes, and remembers, the universe may be doing the same. So let your thoughts drift now, not away, but inward, into the folds of the brain, the curves of space, the gentle hands of time. You are not lost. You are simply being rewritten, gently, slowly, beautifully, and even in the quiet, the memory of you continues.